This week on Capitol Report, hard to believe, election is just 9 days away.
We can't have anyone freak out there, okay? We gotta keep our composure.
Connecticut residents turning out in big numbers for early voting.
I think people appreciate the convenience and flexibility.
So many aerobics in there, so many activities.
Plus, how the older generation of politicians are finding new ways to reach the youth vote.
Whether you're having a look, smacks, and sesh with the boys or you party too hard at the TikTok Riz party.
You don't know what you're talking about.
And Connecticut gets ready to elect another zoo mayor. It's a jungle out there. Capitol Report starts now. Welcome to Capitol Report. I am Tom Dutchick. We are so glad you're spending part of this Sunday morning alongside the Power Panel, the best six man in Sunday morning Connecticut politics television, the great Brandon McGee, head of the Social Equity Council. Good morning.
Thank you.
Joe Orsimus,
the weeds are.
weeds are. Joe Orsimus, member of the Terrence Chang Stick of the Month Club.
Wow. He's on fire today.
Last week I was a dark money sleazebag, so we'll see what happens.
Liz Correa with Republican strategy. The world is her oyster, as we do say. And Johnny Mack, no more Mets. The amazing John McKinney.
I know. Let's go Dodgers.
All right, guys. Hey, did you guys vote yet? Well, all the cool kids are doing it, or at least they're trying to, in case you weren't aware and living on Mars. Connecticut now has early voting for the first time ever in a general election. And let me just say, people are taking advantage of it. I did. Tens of thousands are casting early ballots. And on the first day in Greenwich, the lines were so long that Governor Lamont told reporters it was like getting into Studio 54 in the 70s. Yeah, like he would know. The Gov didn't have time to stick around and returned to vote on Friday instead. And in spite of the lines, the Nedster seemed pretty happy to see the democracy at work in the big G-town. Watch this.
I think it's a grade A problem in the sense that early voting is working. People care about this election. People turned out. It was a long wait. I had some other things I had to do. So I'll be getting down and voting early again sometime probably next week.
Well, there have been some issues. I know New Haven, there's some disability issues, Brandon. Overall, it's been pretty successful.
I got to say, man, as long as you account for parking when you go, you plan, there's long lines out there. And I was excited to cast my vote, early voting as well. So I'm pretty excited about it. And kudos to Stephanie.
I mean, I wish it was going smoothly. Unfortunately, I've heard from folks in multi-district towns where there are significant issues with the incorrect ballots being given out. In Stonington, for example, 550 incorrect ballots were given out. And that has huge consequences for the state rep candidates in that town. And this is something that, unfortunately, the legislation that they passed does not have a cure in the statute for early voting ballot issues. Absentee ballots, as you know, there's a statutory cure for those ballots. I think, yes, convenience is really important. Yes, all campaigns should be and are, I think, for the most part, taking advantage of getting folks out to vote early. But this has not, process-wise, been, I think, as smooth as everybody would like to think.
Yeah, I think we do have to fix some of the issues. The first time out of the chute, you're always going to have unanticipated consequences, but it is good that both parties are embracing it, right? Our message should be to folks, we need you to vote. We need you to participate in our democracy. It's important for everybody. So the more opportunities they have to do that, great. But the legislature is going to have to go back and really look at how they did it. They need to look at the funding mechanism because these municipalities are spending a lot of money for it, and any of the curing issues, especially with ballots. You do not want to take that voice away from the people. We begged them to come out and vote. Now they're voting, and did their vote count for their local state rep or not is a huge question.
Yeah, and the Stonington issue could end up looking like, and you're all too familiar with this, Joe, that issue that happened in Stratford several years ago. You know, the good news for the person who wants to vote on Election Day like me is there not going to be long lines on Election Day. But I think people ought to know that if you're running for state rep and state senate, really tight races, this is great, because what we used to do on Election Day is you'd go get the calls, you know, the sheets from town hall to say who hasn't voted, and you'd frantically be calling them or reaching out to them. Now you know well in advance where your vote is, who's come out, who hasn't come out, and I think it really gives people in close races, if they run good operations, an advantage.
Well, and it helps as you're getting closer to Election Day, the number of people that you're having to spend money on to drive out, the number of people whose doors you have to knock, that number goes down. So it actually makes best use of your volunteer time, of your paid efforts. And so from a campaign operative perspective, it's phenomenal. I think there are a lot of issues that we should have been accounting for ahead of time. And I think it also goes to the total autonomy, I think, that happens at the registrar level. Every town is different, and we need to create some uniformity there.
And as Matt Blumenthal said, the campaign ends 2 weeks earlier, right? All right, guys, so speaking of elections, the Hartford Courant's, our pal Chris Keating, wrote a great story last week about state election complaints and absentee ballot security, specifically in Bridgeport. And in that story, Republican State Senator Rob Sampson claimed the ballot security issues aren't only isolated to Bridgeport. Sampson telling the Courant, you bet it's been happening in other municipalities. We need reform in Connecticut's absentee ballot voting process. Republicans and I have been shouting from the rooftops about this for a long time prior to the viral Bridgeport ballot stuffing videos, which made Connecticut a national embarrassment. Well, the old Democratic leaders in the state Senate were not standing for that. They called on Sampson to retract his statement, saying, quote, falsely asserting there is widespread voter fraud in the state is nothing but an attempt to sow doubt regarding the integrity of our elections. This Trumpian falsehood serves as a local version of national rumors and faceless accusations from the Republican Party. So what did our boy Rob have to say about that? His direct quote, retract my statement? Hell no, guys. What do you think, McKinney?
I have a lot to say about this.
Lot to say.
First of all, what Senator Sampson was responding to is there's a complaint filed with the SEC that a Bridgeport city councilman asked someone who is not an American citizen to fill out an absentee ballot. We know that there was absentee ballot fraud by the Democratic Party in Bridgeport. The former Democratic Party chair in Stamford was indicted, I think, on 14 counts of ballot fraud. So we now have Senator Looney and Senator Duff, who I consider friends, spending more time talking about Senator Sampson's comments than they spent talking about real absentee ballot fraud and election fraud that was and has been proven in Connecticut. One last point. There was a Democratic state senator who recently, with some of these issues, said this could be happening anywhere in Connecticut. I think that's what Senator Sampson's saying. It could happen. It's not widespread, but we should make those changes, make the protections to make sure it doesn't happen.
And John, your words are exactly true. It may be happening. You know, I don't want to go down that path of really making people doubt there are elections. Yes, it does happen. There are bad actors on all sides of all issues that are going to do things, but they need to be found. They need to be found guilty, and they need to be sentenced to jail time or at the minimal fine. And if there's holes in the system, it is incumbent upon the legislature to step in and make sure those holes aren't there. I know Senator Looney for many years. He's been an advocate of more opportunities for people to vote, but he's the first one to speak against absentee ballot and the misuse of them. And we've had state senators, state house members, and campaign operatives all charged by federal authorities for this. It's not going to change. If they're doing it, we're going to catch them.
Good.
And I just want to jump in. I agree. Everything that's already been said. But I think it's also important, the more we talk about, you know, challenging this idea of absentee voting, it's an old story. We've got to be sure that we're encouraging people to lean in on the system as we get ready for a very important election 8 days from now.
Right.
And so the reality is, yes, hold them accountable, but on the same token, we need to encourage more people to participate.
But Brandon, the
in
way that you do that is by giving them the feeling that our elections have integrity. I mean, all you have to go back and do is look at the numbers from the last municipal cycle and the number of absentee ballots statewide that were not returned after people found out what had happened in Bridgeport. And the legislature had an opportunity to do something about it and reinforce in people that our elections are in fact secure, and they did nothing. To John's point, they said nothing even. So I agree with you. We want people actively voting and participating in as many ways as possible, and the Democrats in the legislature did absolutely nothing to make sure that that happens.
All right, guys, so as for that ballot question and the expansion of no excuse absentee balloting in Connecticut, Governor Lamont is reading the tea leaves on that. Take a listen.
I think it will probably pass. I think the convenience of early voting was evident yesterday. I think, no excuse absentee balloting. It's working in, red and blue states all over the country. It's an incredible convenience for people. We can do it with integrity. I hope it passes.
Well, here's a public service announcement from me. I went looking for that ballot question. It's tough to find on the ballot. When you go in there and you look at it, you see the president election first, and then you vote where you want to vote. And then again, on top of it is the question. So if you have to go in there looking first for the question, then go vote.
And you're more in tune than the average voter, right. And this question is on the ballot. That's why I'm not sure it passes.
I know,
there hasn't been enough education about what it actually means and where to find it on the ballot. There aren't many organizations out there talking about it. I don't know that it passes.
I've got to disagree with you. There are Divine Nine. These are Black Greek organizations, fraternities and sororities. They're out on the forefront, educating people on the ballot, sample ballots, reading the question and where to locate it.
I guess we don't have them in these.
We've got to give them credit.
There is always the drop off.
That's right.
As you go farther down the ballot. Look, I'm old enough to remember when Larry Cafaro in the House and I in the Senate as Republican leaders offered no excuse absentee ballots. Democrats all voted against our amendment. So the world has changed.
It's because we had the party lever.
It's all about John McKinney, isn't it? So up next on Cap Report, developing a roadmap to help get Connecticut's disconnected youth moving in the right direction. We're going to talk about how this is going to work with our friend Joe DeLong from the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities when we get back. Do not go away.
We need more Joes on this show.
More Joes.
More Joes.
Discussed before that 1 in 5 of Connecticut's young people are considered at risk or disconnected. That's 119,000 young people spanning every town and city in our state. So what's being done to fix the problem? CCM Executive Director Joe DeLong, who along with the Dalio Foundation released a report last week after a year-long process entitled Young People First. Joe, how you doing this morning?
I'm great, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Joe, a former offensive tackle for the West Virginia Mountaineers, we always point that out, Joe. There was a lot of blocking and tackling in that report. What were the highlights?
Well, I think, Tom, to really break the report down quickly, it falls into 3 areas. The first section of the report really addresses closing the gaps and building out a network of services that young people need. And the importance of that is to making sure that we're not having young people fall through the cracks. The report then goes on to do a lot and address a lot with educational accountability. And a big part of that accountability piece is, frankly, making sure that we are preparing our young people for life after 12th grade, life after graduation to be successful. And then the report from that point, there's 22 aligned actions in this thing. The aligned actions on the back end are really all about workforce. How do we transfer young people into positive careers, not just jobs, but how do we get them out of the starting blocks in ways that they can launch into careers that will keep them successful for decades to come?
So, Joe, you and I all know, we've been around long enough to know that transformational change is tough. So what have the reactions been so far from the governor, legislature, and your friends in the business community?
Well, I think they've been very powerful. CBIA, the Connecticut Business and Industry Association, along with the teachers unions, the United Way of Connecticut, the State School Finance Project, multiple nonprofits, superintendent of schools, have all put out very, very strong statements of support for this plan. And at the legislative level, we were blessed to have the Speaker of the House, Matt Ritter, came out very quickly and praised the work. And just last week, our minority leader, Vin Candelara, was at a Meet the Candidate event. And at that event, Vin spoke very highly about how this is a very important issue heading into this legislative session.
Well, Joe, here's the big question. What does this cost, and how are we going to pay for it?
Well, I think when you talk about cost, the most important thing is to talk about the fact that the largest cost of all of this is the cost of inaction. We currently, the inaction on these young people is costing the state budget annually about $750 million a year. We're losing about $5.5 billion a year in GDP growth. And frankly, these challenges are also driving up taxes on the side of the property tax. We're seeing higher property taxes because of this. So that's the largest cost. What the commissioners did is they really laid out a way to recapture the successful outcomes of this plan to pay for the plan and to do it in a way without any tax increases. And I think that's one of the things that makes it so brilliant is we actually put a plan forth to people that we can show how to pay for it without increasing their taxes and ultimately recapture the success of the plan over time to even stabilize or lower taxes on the property tax side.
All right, Joe, so wrapping it up. So let's say you need to begin work tomorrow. What are the first steps?
Well, we have a lot of allies. It's a lot of collaboration. And I think when it comes to members of the General Assembly on both sides of the aisle, the next steps are to meet them where they are. To really find out the areas that they want to tackle first. This is not something that can all be done in the 2025 session. So we identify the areas where there is the greatest agreement and we move forward. We get those points on the board and we start showing people how we can move the needle with this population.
Joe DeLong, Executive Director and CEO of the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, pride of the West Virginia Mountaineer, who's probably not 275 anymore based on your playing weight, right, Joe?
Yeah, well, I carry it differently,
Right,
let's just say that.
Up next on Cap Report, nothing like old people trying to reach your voters and staying hip. We'll have that story when we get back. Don't go away. This day and age when there are so many different ways to reach so many different voters, one of those resources is, of course, social media. And if you're an old guy like me and the rest of the panel, you might not be a TikToker or posting constantly on X, but in an effort to reach a younger block of voters, a couple of older folks are making an effort to, let's just say, speak the language of those Gen Zers like Cerulli when it comes to getting them out to vote. Let's begin with GOP Party Chairman Ben Proto. I submit this for your approval, or maybe not.
Hey, Connecticut Zoomers, it's time to embrace the Sigma grind set and get ready for your early voting. There's a lot online this November. The Dems claim to care about you, but they're just glazing. Hold up. Let bro cook. The price of everything from gas to glizzies is through the roof. And how you supposed
We're going to let the panel chomp on that one for a moment, but first, here's Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro taking a, similar approach. What's this?
Yo, this is the Ranking Rizzler on Appropriations, serving Connecticut's 3rd District. It's time to enter your dark academia Congress era. All right, besties, House Appropriation is the money moves in Congress. We are not chasing the bag, we are the bag.
Okay, who wants this? Who wants that? This one, McKinney. Okay, go ahead, Ben.
No,
go.
No,
Okay.
No, look, who had John McKinney being speechless on the bingo card?
We're just too old, John.
Let's start with angles first.
Okay.
That's number one.
Okay.
Number two,
Yes.
let's not force language. We give kudos to Rosa DeLauro. Yo,
Is that still a thing?
No, yo.
Yo?
no.
Okay.
No.
Sorry.
See, so
A for effort.
I feel like they need to do what I've done is I check in with my 18-year-old daughter when
There
I'm
you
about to
go.
use a word, and she always says, don't. It'll be weird if you say that. Chairman's Proto's little TikTok, no,
Liz,
awful.
why are we chasing 20-somethings?
I think a big thing when you look at it, right, when you're looking at the polling for Gen Z, if we want to make this a serious conversation,
Yeah.
that is where you see both campaigns, whether it's the brat summer of Kamala Harris or you see the effort that President Trump is making, going on podcasts and Joe Rogan and things like that and really trying to target.
But traditionally, they don't vote. The youth vote does not come out.
Well, that's not true. They don't come out for Republicans generally, right? I mean, in history, you've seen that going specifically for Democrats. And guess what I'm saying is that Republicans are making a big push for those voters, which you should be doing, right? I mean, the goal here is to talk to everybody, but you see both campaigns, and you actually have seen a significant enthusiasm gap among young voters, specifically for Democrats, which is why Kamala Harris is their nominee in the first place.
Young black men, interestingly enough, trending towards Trump now.
I would
Dispute
say,
that.
well, first of all, not all black men, we're not a monolith, right? But there are black men that are supporting Donald Trump. That's just a reality. But now there are tons, if not millions, of black men supporting Kamala Harris. There's Win with Black Men. There's a galvanizing of black men fundraising and debunking a lot of the misinformation around Kamala Harris and her election. Now, there's the economy discussion. There is this opportunity for black men, the agenda that Kamala Harris just recently shared. The reality is, there are men supporting Kamala Harris.
Listen, where do you go to the young kids? You go where they are. I appreciate the Congresswoman and the chairman's attempt, but I think you got to do it with people their own age. You know, I mean, I would love to see, you know, a student at UConn or Quinnipiac or Sacred Heart who's a Republican do the same TikTok video Ben Proto did with all of his people with.
But I think
That's how
it's
you get them
cool, though.
energized.
I think it's cool.
You gotta have fun.
All right.
I mean, there has to be an element.
Okay, get off my lawn. Next on Camp
I'm with
Report,
Tom.
an election where mudslinging and dirty politicians is often the norm. The details when we get back. Do not go away. Fast
Gotta
moving
have
Camp
fun.
Report.
You
Your
kids get
campaign
that
has to
ball out
go
of
far.
there.
We've reached that time of year again. Goody goody gumdrops. The residents at Connecticut's Beardsley Zoo are getting ready to elect a new zoo mayor. Time to say goodbye to Tahu the river otter and welcome one of the new 6 candidates. Hey, big field this year. On the ballot this year, Dumbledore, yellow-banded poison dart frog, Makoi the koi fish, Willow the eastern mud turtle, Barry the red panda, Nua the Andean bear, and Ethel the guinea hog. Voting continues from now until Tuesday, November 5th. The public is asked to make a $1 contribution for each vote they cast. Money goes to the zoo. Hey, listen, if poison is in your middle name, you should not be running for office. And if by merely touching you in a campaign setting causes me to die, that's disqualifying.
Wait, but the poison dart frog is the Rizzler of the zoo who's blazing.
Who you got?
Let's positively
Oh, wow.
come together.
Okay, all right.
Pause.
What do you got, Joe?
I'm going with Ethel the guinea hog. She can keep 5 piglets in order. I'm in.
Okay,
I want
good.
a woman in charge, a female in charge.
Come on,
Liz, who
Ray.
you got?
Heard that.
Who you got?
I would not be able to go back home if I did not vote for the red panda. May.
Okay. I don't get that. I don't get that reference.
You had me at poison.
Turning red.
Okay.
You
had me at poison.
Poison.
Wow.
Poison dart.
Cue Bell
All right, that was it from the coach,
The
Lizzie.
aggressive poison
Turning
guy?
guy. Tom Letchick. See you next
That-
week. Have a happy Halloween.
Today's the day.
Today's the day.
Oh!